Picture an island where the water glows the color of the Caribbean, where a woman of 100 still walks out to her own garden at sunrise and calls it a light morning's work. Now picture that this same island spent nearly 4.5 centuries as its own independent kingdom, with its own king, its own religion, and its own language, long before anyone called it part of Japan. Picture the birthplace of karate. Picture coral reefs, green jungle, and slow mangrove rivers, all of it sitting closer to Taiwan than to Tokyo. And picture that the secret to those long, unhurried lives may have far less to do with some miracle food than you have been told, and far more to do with something you already have within your reach. We will get to the 4 things that seem to carry these people past 100. But first, my friend, forget the Japan you are picturing right now. The snow, the bullet trains, the neon of Tokyo. That is not this place. This is Okinawa. So grab your coffee, find a comfortable seat, and come walk these islands with us. Let us start with where we actually are, because almost nobody gets this right. When you hear the name Japan, your mind goes north, to Mount Fuji under snow, to temples in the cold. Okinawa is the opposite of all of that. It is a long, scattered chain of more than 150 islands called the Ryukyus, stretching south and west across the ocean like stepping stones between the Japanese mainland and Taiwan. Fly from Tokyo, and you are in the air for nearly 3 hours. Fly from the Okinawan capital of Naha to Taipei, and you are there in a little over an hour. That is how far south this is. This is Japan the way the Florida Keys are the United States, a warm, salt air world that the people up north dream about in the middle of January. The climate here is subtropical. Palm trees, not pine forests, a warm river in the sea called the Kuroshio, the Black Current, sweeps up from the tropics and wraps around these islands, keeping the water, bathwater warm, and feeding some of the northernmost coral reefs on the planet. Turn inland in the north of the main island, and the land turns wild, a dense green jungle they call Yanbaru. Laced with rivers you can paddle through walls of mangrove. Look down from the plane window and the water tells the whole story. Rings of pale turquoise fade into deep sapphire, so clear in places that a fishing boat can look like it is floating on air. For the Okinawans, that ocean was never a wall around them. It was the open road out to the rest of the world. Before we go any further, we want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments what time it is, where you are watching this, and which country you are joining us from. We love seeing how far these islands reach. Now, settle back in, because this is where the story becomes something much bigger than a pretty view. There is a reason the whole world knows the name of a tiny village up in that northern jungle. The village is called Ogimi, and the people there gave it a nickname that tells you everything. They call it the Village of Longevity. For decades, Ogimi and the villages around it have held one of the highest known concentrations of healthy people over 100 years old anywhere on Earth. Not people kept alive in beds and hooked to machines, but people gardening, laughing, pulling weeds, and pounding rice well into their late 90s. In Ogimi, women in their 90s still climb into the hills to harvest a small, tart, green citrus called shikuwasa, and many of them keep working the land, not because they must, but because stopping simply never occurred to them. Okinawa became one of the 5 original places that researchers labeled a blue zone, a region where an unusual number of people seem to reach very old age in good health. Sardinia in Italy is one. Ikaria in Greece is another. Okinawa is the one that started the whole conversation. So the question everyone wants answered is the simple one. How? What are they doing out here on this island that the rest of us are not? And the honest answer is not a pill, and it is not a superfood. It is 4 quiet habits woven so deeply into daily life that the people living them barely notice. Let us walk through all 4 slowly, because this, right here, is the reason you clicked. The first is a rule they say out loud before they eat. Hara Hachibu. It is an old teaching that means roughly eat until you are 80% full and then stop. Not stuffed, not loosening your belt. Just 8 parts full out of 10 and you set the chopsticks down. Here's the quiet trick hiding inside it. Your stomach takes a good 20 minutes to tell your brain that it is full. So if you eat until you actually feel full, you have almost always eaten too much. Harahachibu stops you gently before that alarm ever needs to sound. Now think about what that means over a lifetime. The average American sits down and eats until the plate is clean and the feeling says full, which is really the feeling that says just a little too much. The Okinawan elder stops a few bites earlier, every single meal, every single day, for 80, 90, 100 years. That gap is tiny at any one dinner. Stretched across a life, it may be one of the most protective things a person ever does, and it costs absolutely. The second habit is what fills those 80%. The traditional Okinawan plate is built from the garden and the sea. Tofu, plenty of it. Seaweed and kelp pulled off the reef. A bitter green gourd called goya. Beans, greens, and above all the purple sweet potato, which for generations was the staple that carried these islands through hard times. There is very little red meat, and the fish comes fresh from the water outside the door. Here is the part that surprises people. Okinawa is famous today for its pork, but for most of their history, the ordinary family ate very little of it, saving it for festivals and celebrations. The everyday food that built the long lives was plants, and lots of them. And there is more to that old table than the big dishes. Meals come as many small plates rather than one heaping one, which naturally slows the whole thing down. They sip jasmine tea called sanpin cha all day long. They eat sea grapes, a little seaweed that pops like caviar on the tongue. Turmeric flavors their tea and their cooking. Set that whole way of eating against the American plate of processed meat and sugar, and you start to see the gap open up. The third habit is not on the plate at all. It is a word you may already have heard, because it has traveled the world in book after book. Ikigai. It means roughly your reason to get out of bed in the morning. Not your job, not your retirement fund. Your reason. For one elder, it is the garden. For another, it is a grandchild or a craft, or the friends waiting down at the community hall. In much of the West, we retire at 65, and too often, we simply stop. We hand back our reason to be useful, and the body seems to hear that decision and start to wind down. In Okinawa, there is barely a word for retirement in the old sense at all. A 90-year-old still has a role, still has a purpose, still has somewhere she is needed tomorrow morning. And a body with a reason to get up tends to keep getting up. The fourth habit may be the most important of all, and it is the one we in America have quietly lost. It is called moai. A moai is a small group of friends who commit to one another for life. It began long ago as a way for villagers to pool their money and carry each other through hard seasons, and it grew into something far deeper, a circle of people who meet, who share, who hold one another up. Some of these groups are formed when the members are tiny children and stay together for 80 or 90 years. The very same faces meeting week after week for the better part of a century. When you are in a moai, you are never truly alone. Someone notices if you do not show up. Someone checks on you. Someone is there when your husband passes, and there again when your roof starts to leak. Now, do not mistake that for a soft, sweet little point, because it may be the hardest fact in this whole story. In recent years, America's own top doctor issued a warning that being cut off from other people is as hard on the body as smoking most of a pack of cigarettes a day. And that loneliness had become a genuine public health crisis across the country. Think about how many older Americans now spend their days alone in a quiet house, whole days passing between real conversations. The Okinawan elder has been protected from exactly that since childhood by a circle that simply refuses to let her disappear. There they are, eating to 80%, a garden and sea diet, a reason to wake up, and a circle of friends for life. Now notice what is not on that list. There is no gym membership, no supplement shelf, no expensive clinic anywhere in sight. What carried these people was a way of living that most of human history knew by heart, and that we, in our comfort, have slowly traded away. They also simply moved all day without ever once calling it exercise. Out in the garden, walking to a neighbor's house, up and down the hills, it was a kind of gentle, constant motion a human body was actually built for. Let us make it real for a moment. Imagine you are 97 years old and you wake in a small wooden house up in Ogimi. You step out into your garden in the cool of the morning because those vegetables are yours and they need you. Around midday, you eat a light lunch of tofu, sweet potato, and greens, and you stop before you are full, the way you always have. In the afternoon, the same handful of friends you have known since you were a child come by, and you drink jasmine tea and talk the way you have every week for 90 years. You have a reason to rise. You have hands to hold. You are moving, and you are needed, and you are never alone. Now ask yourself, honestly, how many of those four things the average person your age back home still has? That gap, right there, is the whole story of this island. If this is landing with you, do us one small favor and tap that like button. It genuinely helps these islands find the people who need to see them. Now, we owe you some honesty, because the story of Okinawan longevity has a second half that most videos will never tell you. This island is not only the village of longevity, it is also, and this is the truth, a place that is changing fast. And to understand that, you have to understand that Okinawa was never really just Japan at all. For nearly 4.5 centuries, from the early 1400s until 1879, these islands were their own country, the Kingdom of Ryukyu. It had its own king ruling from a red palace on a hill. It had its own religion, led largely by women, by priestesses called Noro, and the king's own sister often held the highest spiritual office in the land. And it grew rich, not from what it dug out of the ground, but from the sea, sending trading ships across the ocean to China, Korea, Thailand, and far beyond. They grew so proud of that trade that they cast a great bronze bell for the palace, and on it they wrote that these little islands were a bridge between all nations, gathering up the treasures of the world. The Okinawans were a seafaring trading people, and to this day they still see themselves as a little distinct. They have their own word for who they are, Yuchi Nanshu, the people of Okinawa. Then the outside world came for them. In 1609, samurai from the Satsuma domain in southern Japan invaded, and the kingdom became a quiet vassal, still wearing its crown, but now answering to stronger masters. In 1879, Japan formally swept the kingdom away and made it a prefecture, and the last king was carried off his own island. And then came the year that every American in this audience knows in their bones, 1945. The Battle of Okinawa was one of the bloodiest of the entire Pacific War, fought foot by foot across these very green hills, and it took a staggering number of lives, among them a huge share of the island's own civilians. On a hill in the south today stands a memorial called the Cornerstone of Peace, where the names of the dead are carved into long stone walls, and they are carved there regardless of which side they fought on. American, Japanese, Okinawan, all of them side by side, name after name. We are only passing through as guests here, and that is a place you visit quietly, with your hat in your hand. After the war, the United States administered Okinawa for decades, until the islands finally returned to Japan in 1972. But America never fully left. To this day, a large majority of the entire American military presence in all of Japan is concentrated right here on this one small island. And with the bases came something else: American food and American habits. The mark is everywhere once you notice it. During those years under United States rule, Okinawans even drove on the right, the American way, and only switched back to the left side of the road in 1978, in a single carefully planned day. There is a stretch of coast built in the American style, with a Ferris wheel and diners, where local families go for a taste of the States without ever leaving the island. And the beloved fast food chain here is an old American root beer joint, the Okinawans call, with real affection, Enda. For the elders, all of this was a novelty. For their grandchildren, it slowly became dinner. And that is the honest twist. The younger generation of Okinawans, the ones who grew up on burgers and fried chicken instead of Goya and sweet potato, do not look like their grandparents at all. Okinawa now struggles with some of the highest obesity rates in Japan, and that astonishing longevity is concentrated in the oldest generation, the ones who lived the old way. It may not pass down. The secret, in other words, was never buried in the soil or written in the genes. It lived in a way of life, and a way of life can be lost in a single generation. There is one more piece of honesty we owe you, because it is being argued about right now. In recent years, a researcher named Saul Newman took a hard look at the longevity data behind blue zones like this one, and he raised an uncomfortable point. In many parts of the world, old birth records are messy, and he argued that some of the world's oldest person claims may come down to simple paperwork errors, and in places even pension fraud rather than real extreme age. He pointed to a Japanese government review back in 2010 that found a shocking number of registered centenarians, more than 200,000 of them nationwide, who were actually already dead or unaccounted for. The Blue Zone researchers pushed back hard, saying they had carefully checked their oldest people's ages and that Newman was painting with far too broad a brush. We are not here to tell you who wins that argument. We are here to tell you it exists, because you deserve the real picture, not the sales pitch. And here is the beautiful thing. Even the skeptics do not really dispute the habits themselves. Eating lightly, eating plants, having a purpose, and staying deeply connected to other people. Those things are good for a human being, whether the old record books are perfect or not. That is the part worth stealing, and no researcher on Earth is going to take it away from you. Now, let us breathe out together, because this island is not only history and hard honesty, it is also one of the most beautiful places you will ever lay eyes on. And we want to show you its wild side. Head up the west coast of the main island, and you reach a building that draws visitors from across the whole world, the Kuraumi Aquarium. The name itself, Kuraumi, simply means beautiful sea in the old Okinawan tongue, and it earns every letter. At its heart is one of the largest aquarium tanks on the planet, a wall of water so vast it can stop you where you stand, and gliding through it are whale sharks, the biggest fish in the entire ocean, drifting past your face alongside giant manta rays. Standing in front of that glass feels like standing at the very edge of the open Pacific, with the whole sea somehow held back by a miracle. For a family from a landlocked American state, it is about as close as you will ever come to swimming beside a creature the size of a school bus. But the truly wild Okinawa is north of there, in that jungle we mentioned, the Yanbaru. This is a rare ancient forest, home to birds and creatures that live nowhere else on Earth. There is a flightless bird up there called the Okinawa rail, found on this island and this island alone. And the whole region is protected now as a national park, recognized by the wider world for how special it is. You can kayak up rivers roofed over by mangroves, hike to hidden waterfalls, and stand under a canopy so thick the light itself turns green. And out in the Kurama Islands, a short hop off the coast, the water has earned its own name. Kurama Blue a shade of turquoise so vivid that divers fly across the planet just to see it, where sea turtles glide right up beside you, and in winter, humpback whales roll through to give birth. This is the Okinawa that the postcards of Japan never ever show you, and it is all right here. All that time spent outside, in gardens, and out on the water brings us naturally back to the table, because you cannot understand these islands without understanding how they eat. The signature dish is goya champuru, a hot, hissing stir-fry of that bitter green gourd with tofu, egg, and a little pork. The word champuru means roughly mixed together, and the Okinawans use that very same word to describe their whole culture, a blend of everything that ever washed up on their shores. There is Okinawa soba, thick wheat noodles in a rich pork broth that is nothing like the soba on the mainland. There is the purple sweet potato, so beloved it now shows up in tarts, cakes, and even ice cream. And there is that old ritual we keep circling back to, the gentle pause before you are full, the chopsticks laid down at 8 parts out of 10. For a real feast, there is rafut, cubes of pork belly braised slow in soy and sugar, and that same island spirit until they nearly melt, a dish that once graced the royal court. There is tofu-yo, tofu fermented until it is as rich and sharp as a fine blue cheese. And to drink, the elders sip awamori, a distilled island spirit made, curiously, from long-grain Thai rice, with the finest bottles aged for years in clay pots until they mellow into something smooth and golden. When the little cups are raised, the toast here is not the usual kanpai, but a bright Okinawan kari. And yes, this is the island that fell hard for American canned pork after the war and folded it right into the local cooking, which is champuru culture in a single can. It takes whatever arrives and it makes it Okinawan. The point was never that every bite here is health food. The point is that the everyday, traditional plate, the one the long-lived elders grew up on, was light, plant-heavy, and shared slowly at a loud table full of people they loved. From the table, let us climb the hill to the single most important building on the island, and to a story of loss and stubborn hope. On a rise above Naha stands Shuri Castle, the old royal palace of the Ryukyu Kingdom. Its main hall painted a deep, glowing red, unlike any castle in mainland Japan. For centuries, this was the beating heart of the kingdom, the king's home, and the stage for its grandest ceremonies. And here is the thing about Shuri Castle. It has been destroyed and rebuilt again and again across its long life, most brutally in the Battle of Okinawa in 1945, when it was pounded into rubble. The Okinawans rebuilt it. Then, in October of 2019, the world watched in heartbreak as fire tore through the main halls once more and burned that beautiful red palace to the ground in a single night. And once again, the Okinawans refused to let it stay gone. Reconstruction has been underway ever since, done with painstaking care and old techniques, and it has become an attraction in its own right, with visitors invited to watch the craftsmen at their work under the theme of showing the recovery. The ancient stone foundations and walls, the truly old parts recognized by the wider world, survived the fire and still stand exactly where they always have. And the Great Red Main Hall is rising again right now, its restored exterior already glowing on the hilltop, its grand reopening drawing near this very year. If you visit in the coming months, you may just catch that royal palace returning to life. There may be no better symbol of these people anywhere than a castle that has burned to the ground more than once and been lovingly raised from its own ashes every single time. That same stubborn spirit gave the world something you have absolutely heard of, even if you never once knew it came from here. Karate was born on these islands. Long before it ever had that name, Okinawans practiced a fighting art they simply called te, which means the hand, blending their own methods with skills carried across the sea from China. Under the Old Kingdom, In eras when weapons were restricted, the empty hand quietly became the weapon, and generations refined it in courtyards after dark. They even turned their farm tools into a martial art all its own, a discipline called kobudo, where an ordinary grain flail became the nunchaku and a rice-planting fork became a fighting blade. From this one small island, that art spread across the entire planet into millions of dojos, onto the biggest stages in sport, and it fittingly took its place among the world's great games, when karate finally reached the Olympics. And there is far more to the culture than the fighting. There is the sanshin, a 3-stringed instrument covered in snakeskin, played on porches all over the islands, its plucky, haunting sound the true voice of Okinawa. There is the Iza, a thundering drum and dance procession where whole neighborhoods parade through the summer streets, the big taiko drums pounding as the dancers spin and shout. And running underneath every bit of it is that famous Okinawan warmth. They have a saying, "Ichariba chode," which means that once we have met, we are already family. Sit with that as a way to greet a total stranger. Not suspicion, not politeness, but instant kinship. It is the very same spirit as the moai, the same flat refusal to let anyone stand outside the circle. They even have a fond name for their own relaxed pace of life. Okinawa time, a running joke that nothing here truly needs to be rushed and that the clock can just wait for the conversation to finish. After everything these islands have lived through, they chose warmth. They chose the slow road, and you can feel that choice the moment you step off the plane. So the spirit of this island has reached far, far beyond its own shores. Karate went global and became something hundreds of millions of people now practice, from Sao Paulo to Los Angeles. And the Okinawans themselves went out into the world too. When times were hard, tens of thousands of them sailed away to build new lives. And today, there are huge communities of Okinawan descent in Hawaii, in Brazil, in Peru, and across the American mainland. Every few years, the diaspora sails home again, and Naha throws open its arms for a worldwide gathering of Uchinanshu, the sons and daughters and grandchildren of the islands, coming back to touch the place they came from. And that other Okinawan word, ikigai, that reason to get up in the morning, has quietly become one of the most influential ideas on the planet in the whole conversation about aging, filling bookstore shelves and shaping how people from London to Los Angeles now think about growing old with purpose. A tiny kingdom that was once swallowed whole by an empire has ended up teaching the entire world how to fight and how to live. Not bad for a scattered little chain of islands most people cannot even find on a map. Which brings us, at last, to the practical part. For those of you already quietly planning a trip in your head. So how do you actually get to Okinawa? And when should you go? You fly into Naha, the capital, usually connecting through Tokyo, Osaka, or a hub somewhere in Asia. The best times to visit are spring and autumn, when the air is warm and gentle and kind. You want to steer well around the deep heat of high summer and, far more importantly, around typhoon season, when the big Pacific storms can roll straight through and shut the whole island down for days. Once you land, a clean little monorail runs through Naha, but to really see the island, you will want a rental car. And remember, they drive on the left here now, the same as the rest of Japan. And give yourself a real time, because Okinawa is not one island, but many. From Naha, you can hop by ferry or short flight out to those Kurama Islands with their famous blue, or further south to Ishigaki and Miyako, where the beaches belong on any honest list of the finest on earth. Costs sit roughly in line with the rest of Japan, which means it is far from the cheapest tropical trip you could take, but nowhere near the priciest either, and the food, in particular, is a gift for the money. The currency is the Japanese yen, and while you will hear Japanese everywhere, you will actually find more English here and in much of the country, a quiet legacy of all those American years. It is also one of the safest places you could ever choose to wander. And do set aside one quiet morning for the Peace Memorial Park down in the south, where the ocean is heartbreakingly beautiful and the history sits heavy in the air, because you will understand this whole island far better for having stood there. One last gentle word for the American traveler. You will see the bases and you will feel the deep, tangled history between our two countries all around you. Meet it the way the Okinawans themselves tend to, with respect and with grace, and you will find these islands welcome you like almost nowhere else on earth. So let us come all the way back at the very end to the question we started with. How do these people live so long? After all of it, the light plate, the lifelong friends, the reason to rise, the slow and sunlit days, we think the real answer is far quieter than any secret. The Okinawans have an old phrase, Nuchi du Takara, which means life is a treasure. And they seem to have understood something the rest of us keep on forgetting. They did not chase long life. They never counted the years or hunted for the one perfect food. They simply built a life so warm, so connected, and so full of small daily purpose that the years just kept arriving, almost by accident. The long life was never the goal. It was the reward for living well. The garden gave them a reason. The moai gave them a hand to hold. The light plate and the slow, loud table did their quiet work in the background year after year. And the decades simply added themselves up. So maybe that is the one thing worth carrying home from these islands. Not a diet plan, not a miracle, just a reminder that a good, long life may be built out of the least expensive things there are. A lighter plate, a real reason to get up in the morning, and a handful of people who will never, ever let you face the world alone. Our walk through Okinawa ends here, my friend. From all of us, and in the words of the islands themselves, Nifi di Biru, thank you truly for spending this time with us. May you stay Ganju, strong and well, for many long years to come. And remember, Ichare Bachode. Now that we have met, we are family. So where should we go next? We could carry on into the story of these long-lived places and sail to Ikaria, the Greek island where they like to say the people forget to die. We could cross to Sardinia, high in the Italian mountains where the old shepherds outlive very nearly everyone. Or we could fly to Nicoya in Costa Rica, one more corner of the world that somehow seems to bend time itself. Tell us in the comments where you want to travel next. Subscribe and come along with us, and we will keep finding the most extraordinary places on this earth together.